Welcome back to Ayaz Tech. In this video, we are going to complete these features. We completed the search feature, so you can now easily search. Earlier, the search feature, search input was hard coded, but now it is dynamic. You can actually search it with the help of the Node.js in the MySQL. For example, I type H, and it will show you all of the contexts that have the character H in it. And if you type it more specifically, then it would show you, it will narrow down your result. And if you click on any contact, then it will take you to that contact detail page. Further, other than that, we also worked on the labels. Earlier we were showing the hard-coded labels, but now these labels are coming dynamically coming from the Node.js, and Node.js is getting them from the MySQL. And we completed the entire CRUD operations in the labels. Like, you can now create the label like this, hello there, and press enter, and you would notice that the label has been created. And even if you reload it, you will see that label there. Further, you can edit a label and save it, then it will update it. Further, we worked on the delete label function. So if you click on the delete icon, it will delete the label. You can delete them one by one. So that's what we did in this video. If you want to learn how we did this, then please continue watching this video. Now we are going to work on the search feature. In the past, we created the basic UI for the search input, where you type something and it shows a drop-down menu. Now we have to make it functional, dynamic, and also we have to improve it so that it could fix some issues. For example, right now you can see that other content is overlapping the drop-down menu. So we have to increase the z index maybe to fix this problem. So let's begin. So open the VS Code, go to the front end, and let's see where is that header. So here we have the header placeholder where we are loading the header. So we can just go to the header.html to customize this search. So let's type something and see what is the issue with this drop down. Go to the inspect element and click on that suggestions div, and let's see how it is being visible there. So I can see that it is visible with the help of the position absolute. That's mean we can fix this visibility issue by adding the z index. So I added z index 1, that fixed one problem, but second problem is that the background is transparent. So we have to add some background color like white background. So for that, I will just type background color should be white. That would totally fix the problem. Now you know that this is the temporary change. I have to copy this and move it into the CSS file. So before doing anything else, I have to start my SaaS server. So for that, run npm run, and I have that command written in the package.js, and so I will open it and copy the command to run it correctly. So with this, the SaaS compiler has started to run in watch mode. So now go to the asserts SaaS and click on the index.scss. So in this file, we have to find the class.suggestions. Okay. Yeah, we have to add those properties here that we added here. First property was the z index, and second property was the background color white. Okay. All right. Now, when user types something, we should not show this dummy data. We should search in the database with the help of the Node.js, and we should show the correct result set here. So let's see what we can do for that. Open the header again. Okay, we already have the event search key up. So let's find this function in the common.js. Okay, this is the function that is showing the suggestions box. So I would say before showing the suggestions box, we should search data from the Node.js. So for that, uh, I'm going to hit the Node.js endpoint that would give us the result. We did not create the search endpoint yet. We will create it shortly. So I will write my JavaScript code first. So just type fetch, and here I'm going to pass the backend base URL. Then I need to specify the endpoint name. I am going to have an endpoint with this name, contact slash plus. After that, actually, I will add search slash, then I would pass my keyword. So this would be the format of my Node Express.js route, and I'm going to hit that endpoint with the get method. So that's mean I don't have to specify the method in the second parameter, so I can just leave it like that. And as now I have to resolve this promise, as we do always, I have to add a sync before the search key up, and here I would have to add the await keyword to resolve the promise, and I'm going to save the response in this variable. Next, I need the data from the response. To get that, you have to resolve a promise that is returned by the JSON function. So if you resolve the promise returned by the JSON function, you will get your desired data in the form of JSON that you can later utilize. So before consuming this data, I would like to test, I would like to see my data to understand how it looks like, to make sure that it is coming in the correct form. So for that, just alert json.stringify and add data. All right, next, let's go back to the Node.js server and let's define this endpoint there. So we will add our new endpoint in the index.js. So right now I'm throwing all of my endpoints in the same file. This is normally not a good practice because when your code grows, when you have a lot of endpoints and a lot of code in your project, then your file would be too messy to handle. So it would be very complicated for you to manage your code. So it's better to use different multiple files, or you have to organize and refactor your code to make it more organizable, more manageable for you. So we will definitely refactor our code in the future videos, but for right now, I am just adding the new endpoint in the same file. So let's copy paste this code, because our new function endpoint is going to look like this, almost like this. So we know that we have our path. If I take you back to the uh, other front-end project, you will see that this is the endpoint that we need. So let's take it back and paste it here. So this is the endpoint, but here instead of ID, we are expecting the keyword that we need to search from the database. So keyword is actually it can be anything. It does not matter. You don't have to specify the same name. I'm just calling this anything after this slash as the keyword. You can call it XYZ, whatever you prefer. So whatever you name it, you have to get that value or that parameter with the same name. As we renamed from ID to the keyword, so instead of having ID here, you have to use the property keyword here. And this time, instead of using ID, I would use the full name. Okay, so after that, if it finds any contact with the full name equal to this keyword, then it would give us the result. Further, as this is a string, this keyword is going to be a string. That's why we must have to pass it inside the single quote. So otherwise it would crash. For the ID, for the type ID, you don't have to wrap it inside the single quotes, but for the strings, uh, you must have to wrap it within the single quote. So now let's read the rest of the code, and I can see that we don't have to change anything else, but here I have to delete this line because uh, we copied this section from above code, and in the above code we needed only one row, but this time we needed multiple rows. We need multiple contacts that we want to return as the response of this request. So just let's remove it, and I want to return the response that is coming back from the callback function parameter of the query. So let's test it and see if that is working. So I can just copy paste because this is the get method. That's mean I can easily test this endpoint from the browser. I don't need the postman for that. So let's just type localhost 3400, and after that I am passing the uh, route of my Express.js. Here I will type the keyword ABC, and you can see that it gave me the empty array. That's mean nothing was found in the context with the full name ABC. So let's check into our database to see what is the full name. So just copy any full name, or maybe this one, and this time I'm using the correct first name, full name. This time I should get the data, but still I can see that it did not return me any result. So that is strange. Let's see what's wrong. Let me reload it to see if this is the correct. Okay, I can see that there is that was showing me old data. I after reloading it, I can see that I have only two contacts, and these are the correct full names. So I would use this one, and this time you can see that it gave me the correct data. uh, okay, so another thing I will show you that I gave it the exact full name without any uh, without any short form of that name. I mean, for example, if you don't want to type the full name, you just want to type hello, it should give you the data, but it is not giving the data because in our query we literally we are literally saying that give us data only if full name is equal to this string. But what about the partial match? For example, if some part of the string is matching, for example, in our database you can see we have hello again word in the full name, and you are searching for the word hello, then it should give you all of the contexts that have the full name that contains the word hello. So to do that, In the MySQL query, in SQL query, we have another approach to search that is called like operator. So instead of comparing with the equal operator, you can just use like, and other than that, you can use after single quote, you have to pass the percentage sign after the single quote and before the closing single quote. With that, it would search that word or keyword within the full name, and if that keyword is found anywhere in the full name, then it will give you result. So even if it is not 100% same, it would still give that to you. For example, now we have hello. If I reload it, then it should give me the response. So you can see that I did not type the exact full name. I just gave it hello with the small h character. It still gave me the hello again contact. So that's mean if you have multiple contacts with the same uh, word in it, then it would still give me the response. So let's add another contact with the word hello in it. My contact with hello. Okay, and xyz@gmail.com. This is the number, this is the website, and let's save it. So after saving it, we have two contacts with the word hello in its full name. So now if you reload it, you will notice that it will give us two contacts because two contacts have the word hello in it. Hello again and my contact with hello. So now we can see that our endpoint is ready to be used in the front end. So let's go to the front end and see. Remember, we already have added the fetch function in the front end, and we have added the alert, so we should see the response in the alerts. Let's see if that works. Okay, you can see that it is giving me data, but as soon as I type incorrect string, for example, instead of hello, I type any other such character that does not match with our data in the database, it will not give us anything. For example, I typed hel5 and that was not found in our database. So that's why it gave us the empty array. So that's mean it is working perfectly fine. Now we can proceed and we can display the data, render that data in this drop down. Okay, so let's do that. I'm going to delete that. Now we have the data JSON and we can pass that data into this function. So, or maybe uh, we should not pass it there. Instead, we should create a new function that would be dedicated to only render the content of the DOM. For example, I am going to name that function render suggestions in suggestions box. Okay, it is quite big name, function name, but it's fine. Okay, so now I will call this function and pass the data to this function so that it could render. Now let's go to the header and let's understand the structure of the web page for the suggestions. So we can see that we have a div suggestions and every suggestion has a class suggestion. So we can simply uh, generate all of these suggestions in the JavaScript and load them in this div with the help of JavaScript. So I'm going to delete all of these suggestions because this time we are going to load them with the help of the JavaScript. Earlier we hard coded here. So I'm just going to cut this option, and further if you look at that, we should also use this selector search container. Okay, so here I don't want to lose the content that I copied from the HTML, so I'm just going to paste it here. For time being, I will get it after some time. So I have data, and I know that this data has an array of objects. So I will just, first of all, I will create a variable, let suggestions is equal to empty string. So now I will run a loop over data, for example, data dot for each. Because this is an array, so we can run an array on this function. We can run the for each loop on this array. So here in every iteration, we are getting a suggestion, or you can call it contact. So I have a contact in every iteration because this data is an array of contacts. So now I will cut this string because now it's the time when we need this content. So I will start concatenating uh, the suggestion with the suggestions variable. So for that, suggestion plus equal and this. So with every iteration, it will keep concatenating the new suggestion div with the suggestions, and at the end we will have a list. We will have multiple divs with the class suggestion, and the structure would be same and output would be same that we had earlier here. It would look like this after it render it. It will have multiple suggestion elements. So that is what we are going to achieve with that code. So now here we need to name the we need to display the full name of the contact. So for that we are going to use this syntax contact dot full name, and here we have to display the email if it is available. For that we know that email is inside contact dot email property, and at last we need to display the first character of the full name in this avatar. Okay, so full name dot, I guess it is character at 0 index and to uppercase, I guess. Okay, now at the end when all of the iterations are completed of this loop, I want to see the structure what I have made in the suggestions. For that I'm going to make it alert. Okay, let's see what we have in the suggestions. Okay, we can see that I have two divs with the class suggestion. One is this one and second one is this one, and we can see that data is being populated inside the placeholders. So let's so right now we did not load it in the suggestions box, so let's do that. For that, first of all we have to access this element. So I'm going to use this selector. I'm going to say that document dot query selector, and there is an element with the id search container, and inside that we have another element with the selector dot suggestions. So in this way now I have access to this container where we are going to load all of the suggestions. So let's type inner HTML is equal to suggestions. So in this way I have loaded all of my HTML that I generated with the help of this loop into the suggestions container. So let's see if that is working. Yes, it is working perfectly fine. You can see I typed H and it is showing me all of the contacts that have the character H in its full name. So you can see that H is in this full name, H is in this full name, and in this as well. So if I type more specific like hello, then you will see that we have only two results. So if you type more specifically, then it will narrow down the result like this. Okay, so that is working perfectly fine. Next thing that we have to do is that as soon as you click on this contact, then it should redirect it to the contact detail page. So it should behave in the same way like you click on this contact. So it should work like same way. So for that, I have to add an click event on click, and here I want to say open contact, and in the contact I would pass the contact ID, and the ID is in the contact variable. So we have to create this function if it is not available. So let us look at the index.html to understand how it is redirecting user to the contact page if we click on the row. So this is the index.html, and here I can see that we have the render contact. So it is not any complex function. So either you can move this code in, because this is also doing the same thing. Either you can move it into another function to make it reusable, or you can just write it again. As this is not too much complex, so let's just reuse it. I just copied this code and I will come back to the common.js, and here I want that whenever we click on the search result, then it should redirect user to the to this route, and this is the contact.html, and id would be the contact.id. So this would just works just fine. So for example, if I click on that, you can see that it has redirected me to the detail page. You can play with multiple contacts one by one. If you click on the hello again, you can see that now we are on the hello again. So with that, our functionality for the search input has been completed. So after that, let's see what we have to complete. After that, we have to work on the labels. So far, we have hard coded all of these labels. So before starting work on the labels, uh, let me repeat myself that what are the labels for and what is the purpose. Labels are actually, it's like a group. So you can create multiple groups of your contacts, and for example, you have a list of contacts that belong to the same group, same category. You can create a label and you can add all of those contacts into that label or group. So you can consider labels as a groups or labels or tags, whatever you feel more comfortable. So it's in simple words, labels are like a group. You can or you can also consider it like categories. You can categorize your contacts. So so let's begin that. Before moving into that direction, let us first commit our code so that you can get the meaningful commit to follow. So I would name it completed search feature and commit it. yes, and upload it. And similarly in the backend, I'm going to commit it as well. Completed the search feature, commit yes, and upload it. All right, so it has been uploaded. Now next step is that first of all we have to create a table in our database to save all of the labels. Right now we don't have any table other than contact, so let's create a new table. So I assume that you already know that how to create a new table. Uh, Either you can create a table with the help of SQL query, or you can use any client side tool like this. I'm using table plus, but in your case you might be using the workbench or any other MySQL management tool. Every client tool for MySQL has have the UI for you to create tables. Even if you don't know how to write an SQL query to create a table, you can still create a table with the help of the UI of whatever client you are using. So in this client, in this software, if you are using table plus, then it is this is how I will create. I will just click on the plus and it has created a new entry. I will rename this table and the name of this table would be label. Okay, and we have to create multiple fields. So first a field would be the ID, and data type would be also integer, and I want to make it primary key. So let me see. Yeah, so column default is already auto increment. That's mean it would make it primary key automatically. After that, I need another field that would be the title of for the label, and the data type would be varchar, and it should not be nullable. You cannot create a label without title, without text in it. So I think that's all for now. Further, you can create another field that will save the date of the creation. You can call it created at. I don't know when we will need it, but we might need it in future. So I'm just creating it now so that we could have a track of the history that when we created this entry. So the type of the created at should be date time. So select that, and default should be now. So now is actually the MySQL function. So that's mean whenever you will insert anything in your label table, it will automatically add the current correct date time for you by itself. You don't have to add that date. So I don't want to make it null as well. So all right, now let's create this table. For that I will save it in the table plus, and it has created this table. So now you can see that the table has been created and it has all of these fields. Next, I am going to add some data in it manually. We will add data to the UI later, but for now I am filling some data manually. For that, right click on it, new, no, let's see how we can add data. Okay, here I can add data. So the title would be, I can call it, for example, category 1, and I am going to save it. So after saving it, you will notice that the date would be there automatically. I did not add the date. It has added the unique ID and also the current time by itself. That's great. Now I will copy paste this data to have few more categories. Remember that you cannot have same primary key more than once, so primary key should be unique every time. So that's why I'm changing the ID every time I copy paste. So I have inserted total three categories or labels. Now it's time to create an endpoint in the Node.js to get the list of all of the labels. For that, go back to the index.html and create another endpoint. So as our endpoint is going to look like this, so I will copy the same endpoint and I will edit this code to make it for label. So here I would say I need label, and here instead of select all from contact, I would use the table name label, the table name that we just created. And other than that, other things would stay same, because if we get the response in the result, we will just return it as it is. So label, okay. Now it's time to test it. So for that, let's open this same URL, and here instead of contact I would type label, press enter, and you can see that we have three categories coming as the response of this API hit. So these are three objects, 1, 2, and 3. Now our endpoint is ready to be used by the front end. So let's go back to the front end and make some changes to consume this endpoint. For that, let's find the code for the sidebar. So this is the HTML for the sidebar, and here we can see that we have hard coded all of the links in the drop down content. For example, this is one link that has the label 1. So we have to generate this entire section dynamically with the help of the JavaScript, right? So let's do that. I'm going to cut it. Before doing that, let me see if I put it inside a div, it should not disturb the layout, because I will create a placeholder for the link so that I could inject my generated content inside this div with the help of JavaScript. ID links container, okay. Now if I look at that, it did not destroy my layout, so that's mean I can use this structure. So now let's cut this HTML out, and we know that now we have to load the generated HTML inside this element. Okay, so let's go back to the common.js, and I just want to create a function that would say function load labels in sidebar. Okay, and I'm going to paste the HTML structure that I copied. I will delete it in short time when I need it. So first of all, I will create a variable let link. Links is equal to empty string, and first of all I have to get, actually there should be two functions that I imagine. First function is the load labels, and second function would be the render labels. Okay, so load would actually get the data from the Node.js, and render would generate all of this HTML and insert in the HTML. So I will create another function, render labels in sidebar. Okay, so this code should go in this function because this is about rendering and this is about loading data. And so I will again call the fetch function, and I have to make it async so that I could resolve the promises with the help of await. And instead of this endpoint, I would use label. And now if everything works correctly, then I should get the JSON array in the data variable. I can then use it. So then I will call the render labels in sidebar function. And this function definitely need the data that we got from the Node.js. So I have passed this data to this function that I will receive it here. Now I have the array available in this variable. You can just call it labels. We know that this we are getting labels in it. So I'm going to run a loop on that labels dot for each. And here I have every label in this every iteration. And now I will cut this HTML structure or template and I will concatenate it with the links variable. So with that, it would concatenate this entire string with the links variable on every iteration. And on every iteration, we will attach it or concatenate with this variable after modifying this chunk of HTML string. So we know that now we have the title coming from the label variable. So I will get the title from the variable. And for now, right now, we don't have the information that how many contacts are in that label. So for now, I will keep this counter as it is. I will not change it. But later, when we will create relation between labels and context, then I will make this number dynamic as well. So this number would also be coming from the database. So that is it for now. After that, our links variable is ready. We should inject it in the desired section and let us copy the selector. So we know that uh, so we have to be very specific. So this would be my path of selector. I would say document.query selector, and there I am saying it that there is an an element with this selector's hash sidebar, that's mean ID sidebar, and in that element we have another element called, one second, yeah, we have another element with the class drop down section. So you would specify the path of the selectors in the same way like you do in the CSS, so nothing new there. So in that drop down section, we have another section called links container. So in this way, you have to specify it very correctly uh, in a very specific way so that it could work. Now, as I have access to the DOM element, now I can tell it to insert all of the links HTML string generated into the inner HTML of this element. Okay. Now it's time to test it, but before testing it, we know that we never called this function that is load label in the sidebar. So we have created this function, but we never called it yet. So we have to call it. So to call that, let me see where we are normally loading things. So here we are loading the sidebar. So I believe that we should load the content only after sidebar is loaded. So we know that after this point the sidebar is loaded. So now we can start the loading labels process. So I have called it further, as we know that this is a promise because there is async keyword before this function definition. That's why we must have to add a wait before this function to resolve it, because as I told you in the previous videos that every function that has async before its definition, then that's mean that function would by default return promise. It would definitely return a promise, no matter if you return something or not, but it would automatically return a promise. Even if you return something that is not a promise, it would automatically convert that returned value into the promise. So we have to resolve that promise. So I will add the async so that I could use the await here. Now you can see that we still have error after adding async. The reason is that we have to add async to the parent function of the line of code that has the await keyword. So if you try to find the parent function of this line of code, you will notice that this is the parent function. That's mean async keyword should go there instead of top. You should add the async here. Now you can see that the error has gone. Now let's test it and see if that is working. I hope that it will be working. All right, you can see that all of my categories have been loaded that I added in the MySQL manually. After that, let us implement the create label function so that we could add labels from the UI as well instead of adding them manually from the MySQL tool. So before doing that, I have to fix the label. It should be create label, not create contact. So let me search this dialog. We know that there is an input with the string type, the label. So here is the dialog. Now I can just easily edit it. It should be create label. Okay. So, all right. Now, so by clicking on the save button, we have to collect the information from the input and use it to insert in the database. So, so this is the form and type is submit. Here I will use the uh, use an event on for on submit. We have an event on submit on the function on the form tag. So here I will call a function uh, on create label form submit. So here I will pass the event that is, so whenever this function would be called by this event, we know that there is an event available in a variable called event. We can just pass it to this function, and now obviously we have to define that function in the common.js file. So here, so all right, here I am receiving the event. Now I have to get the value from this event of the form. So let me see, alert event dot value. I'm not sure if value is available there. So let's see. Uh, Save. No, value is not there. We have to get value. Let me search from the Google. JavaScript on form submit get value from the form event. So let's try this thing. New form data. So this is one method, but let us search for a few other solutions. Yeah, this is the solution that I can see in different places. So let's use this one. So first of all, you will create a variable let data is equal to new form data, and in this you have to pass the event dot target. Okay, and after that you have to replace data with an array. And I hope that you are already familiar with this operator. We call it spread operator. So we are going to call data.entries. Data.entries would give us an array. So in this way you will have pure JSON version of your data. Let us see what we have in it. I'm going to alert data, and let's remove this alert and see how it works. No, it did not work, so maybe something is wrong in the dialog. Here we can see that we did not add the name, so maybe that was the reason. Title. Okay, let's try it again. Okay, you can see that we have the data, but this is not much helpful for me because it should be an object or something like that, not like that, not like this. So let me see what else we can try. Or maybe there is alternate solution, that is you can just use the DOM uh, solution. You can access the DOM element and get the value from there. So that is also another approach. Instead of this one, I would just say let form is equal to document.query selector. Here pass the ID of the element. In this way I have access to the element or form. So this is the, you can just name it dialog. Okay, because this is not a form is inside this dialog. So now I want to access an input with the attribute name equal title. So I would say that let title is equal to dialog dot query selector. uh, you know that we use this syntax to access any element with the help of the uh, attribute, and after we get it we will access its value. Now let's alert the title to see if we have the if we have the title correctly in this variable. Yes, we have access to it. So now we have the title that user wants to create. We can use it to hit the Node.js endpoint to create that label. We will create the endpoint to create the title, to create the label. But before that, I will complete my function first. So we know that we have to call the fetch function, and we have to pass the variable backend base URL plus, and the path would be label. And this time, as we are creating the data we are inserting. For that, the convention is that we have to use method post, and then you have to pass the header content type. So instead of typing it from scratch, I will just copy paste like this because that would save my time. So here, instead of IDs, I want to pass the title. Okay. By the way, another tip for you is that uh, you can create a property value like this, but there's a short version of this is that you don't, if a property and value, if property and the value variable name is same, you can just leave it like that. It would work just fine. So that is short form of it. Further, I need to add async before it and type await so that I could access the response by resolving the promise. Here I would say that I have a response, and now we have two options. One is either we reload the page so that it would re-render everything on the sidebar. Our second approach is that instead of reloading the entire page, we just get the label that was created and insert it with the help of JavaScript in the sidebar. And third approach is that we just rerun a function that we created above, that is load label in sidebar. So with that, it would just hit the Node.js again to get the list of the latest labels, and it would re-render the suggestions. So let's do that. I guess that is more straightforward and quick. So let's do that. I just called this function after it this function. If this endpoint is resolved, we are hitting this function. This function then hit the Node.js again to get the list of all of the labels, and then it would render those labels in the sidebar HTML. So let's try that. Actually, before that, I forgot to define the endpoint in the Node.js. So let's go to the Node.js. I'm going to copy paste this section, and instead of get, I would say it is post. And here, instead of SQL, I want to use insert SQL statement. Instead of select, I need insert statement, that is insert into label. Here I would give it the name that I want to insert, and here I want to pass the list of values, and here I have the title in the request.body. Don't forget to add the single quotes around the title, because this title is a string and you cannot insert a string without having the single quote around it. So after we get a response, we will check if there is an error, then it will throw the error, otherwise it will return the result. So that's great. Now let's test it. I'm going to add a label hello, click on the save. Okay, you can see that it has reloaded the sidebar, and it has now it is showing the new label that I created. But there was one issue that I noticed, is that even it created the label, but it did not hide the dialog. So we have to hide the dialog as well. So maybe we already have the code to hide the dialog. So let's see. In the sidebar, we have the hide create label dialog function that is already created. We can just hit it to hide it. So for example, on label create label form submit, I can immediately hide it after getting my value. So I have called this function. This function will then do its job. It would immediately hide the dialog, and meanwhile it will hit the Node.js to create that entry. So let's try it again. Cat 5 or anything like that. Click on the save. You can see that the dialog was hidden and the category or label was loaded in the sidebar. So that is perfect. It is working perfectly so far. Next thing is we have to implement delete and edit. So we will start from the delete function. By the way, as we are not using this event variable, so I don't need to expect it here, and I should remove it from the sidebar as well. We should not pass the event because we are not using it. So that is unnecessary. All right. Now I have to create another function that would be delete label. Okay. And a sync function. Here I'm expecting the ID of the label so that I could use it to send to the Node.js to delete it. Now I can call it again, fetch method, await fetch backend URL plus slash label, and this time the method would be delete because we are going to delete. This time we don't need to pass the headers, that's fine, but we have to pass the ID after label. So this is the ID, and then after we get some response from this fetch, after resolving the response, then we have to reload the labels in the sidebar. We know how to reload them. We will just call this function again and it will reload it, and we will see the updated changes in the sidebar immediately. So before testing it, we have to obviously add the delete endpoint here. So I'm going to copy paste the same endpoint. I will make some modification. For example, instead of post, I need delete method here. And instead of insert, I need delete from label where ID should be equal to. And here I have the ID coming in after this slash, and I have given it the name ID. So that's mean I can access this ID by typing request.parents.id. So whatever name you will give to that parameter, you can access that parameter with the same property that you used here. If you typed XYZ, then you have to type XYZ here as well. So these two things should be same. So it's up to you whatever name you decide here. But whatever you decide the name of this parameter, you have to use the same name here as the property of the parameters here. So after that is done, I don't have to change anything else. So let's save it and test it. So here, for example, I want to delete this one. Oh, 1 second. I did not call the delete label function yet. So for that, let's go to the function where we are rendering the labels in the drop down. So here, this is the code, and here we can see that this is the button that is showing the delete icon. So let's add the on click event on it, and here I want to call this function, but this function also needs an ID of the label. For that I would use this syntax and pass label dot ID. So let's see. I want to delete this one. I clicked on that, and you can see that it has deleted, and after deleting it, it has reloaded the sidebar labels, and now we cannot see the category one there. If you even reload it, you will see that label does not exist there anymore. If you further want to verify, just open the MySQL and just reload it. You will notice that category one has been removed. You will not see it there anymore. All right, so let's delete this one as well. Great. All right, after that is done, next thing is we have to implement the edit pencil icon. Okay, so we have to reuse the same dialog in order to update a label. So that can be a little bit tricky, but uh, you can understand by following each step that I'm doing. So first of all, open the dialog. We already have given it a name, label editor. So I can just open this dialog. So we already know that there should be a function called show uh, create label dialog. We know that this function exists, so we will just call it whenever user clicks on the edit icon. So first of all, let's find the edit icon. This is the edit icon here. uh, I will call this code. I will copy this code and paste it here, and by clicking on this edit icon, instead of calling delete label, I would like to call edit label, and I would have to define that function. And we know that in this function we are getting the label ID, and with that I want to show create label dialog. With that, the dialog would be visible. So you can see that, oops, I can see that the somehow I lost the edit icon. So let me see what wrong we did here. Yeah, I did a mistake. I missed the double quote after that. Now it should work fine. Okay, we have the pencil icon. If you click on that, the dialog is visible, but there are two issues in this dialog. One issue is that we don't have, we should replace the word create with the word update label. And also we should fill this input with the title of the label that was clicked from the sidebar. So for that we have to access this element again in the same way like we did before. So once this dialog is visible, I want to access the dialog like this: document.query selector with the ID this, and then in this I want to update the title. Dialog dot query selector dot, so we have to find the element that has the title. So this is the element and the class is dialog title, so I would find that element with this selector, and then I want to replace the inner HTML with update label. Okay, so after that I want to update the value of the input. So dialog dot query selector, and here there is an element with the name title. So this is the input, and then I want to add the I want to pass the title that is coming from the parameter. We did not pass that parameter, so I'm going to receive that parameter as well. So I have received the title. So obviously we have to pass the title as well as the second parameter. So I'm going to copy paste this two times, and here uh, whenever you pass, remember, don't forget the basic core concepts of JavaScript. Remember, whenever you call a function and if you pass a string, you always pass a string inside single quote. So you must have to pass your title in the single quote, and then the use the title property. Okay. Uh, okay. So let's see if that works or not. You can see that the heading is updated and input is also updated. So before implementing the save button, I want to show you another issue, that if you close this dialog and if you click on the okay, I can see another serious issue. When you click on the cancel button, it inserts the label. That is totally wrong behavior. Let us understand why it is happening. So we created a button, and we did not mention that what kind of button it is. So it is considering every button as a submit button. That's why it is triggering the on submit function. So we don't want to trigger the on submit event if user clicks on that. For that, I have to specify the type of button. The type of button should be button. In this way, form will understand that it will not trigger on the click event of the button. So let's try again. So if I click on that, if I cancel, it should not insert that category. We can see that that category is not inserted. That's mean the issue is resolved, but the other issue is still there. So if you click on the create label, you can see that in case of create, it should not say update label, it should say create label. Also the input field should stay empty, but it is showing the old content that will loaded by clicking on the pencil icon. So that's mean whenever we call a function show create label, first of all it should reset the dialog. So I will create another function, reset create label dialog, and I will write the instruction in it that I need a dialog in the parameter, and then in the dialog I have an element with the attribute name title, and I want the value of this input as empty string. Further, I want to undo the title of the dialog. So query selector, let us copy the class name of the header from the sidebar. So this is the class name that I want to access, and then I would say it that please replace the inner HTML with the create label. So with that, by default, every time you call the function show create label, it would immediately reset the create dialog function. It will call this function that would reset the dialog. So in the case of the edit label, it would call this function that would reset the dialog, but again we will then update the dialog to match our desires. Okay, so let's test it again. I clicked on edit. Oops, something wrong happened. We messed it up. There must be some error in the console. Let's find that. If you look at that, it is saying that we are trying to use query selector of undefined. We are trying something like this, undefined dot query selector. So that is totally illegal in JavaScript. You cannot say that because so there is we are using a property whose value is undefined, that is undefined, and we are trying to run query selector function on that. So we have to check what is wrong. So it is giving us the entire stack trace where you can understand where this issue is actually happening. It is saying that it is happening in this function reset create label dialog and common.js. So I think I know what is the problem. The problem is that reset dialog function is expecting a parameter that is the DOM element dialog. So we did not pass that DOM element. That's why it was breaking. Now I have fulfilled its requirement, so it should work just fine. So let's try it again. If you click on the pencil, oops, still issue. Let's see what is wrong there now. This time the error message is different. It is saying that inner HTML of null. That's mean we are using inner HTML here, and that's mean uh, it could not find this DOM element, and the reason is that the selector is not correct. Remember, this was a class, so we did not mention the class, so you have to type dot to consider it as a class. Now let's try it again. If you click on the pencil, this time it worked correctly without any error message. If you close it, you create the label, you will see the default state of the dialog. But if you click on the pencil, you will see the dialog that would look like this. Okay, now after that is done, uh, I am going to hit the another thing I have to be careful of. We have to insert this ID somewhere in that dialog. So in this dialog, I'm going to create another hidden input type hidden. So this input would be the part of this form, but it would not be visible in the UI. I want to save my label ID here if we are if we have any label ID. So in the case of the update label, we have the ID, but in the case of the create label, we don't have any ID. So in that case, it would stay empty. But in the case of the update, this input will have the ID of the label. So I will give it a name ID. Okay. Now we know that this input will have ID only if we are updating. So for that, whenever I make these changes, I will also insert my ID in the input that has this attribute, and the value of this input would be this. Also, as I made this change here, I must have to reverse this change in the reset dialog function. So in this, I'm resetting everything. So I should have reset the this new input as well, that has the name ID. Okay, now everything is great. So after that, uh, we know that in the sidebar we have a function called on create label form submit. So I will go to that function, and here I will decide if I have to insert a label or if I have to update the label. I know how I can make sure that if I have to update or create. We know that we have an input ID in that form. We will use that to create that condition. For example, I will save the ID from the ID input, and if there is no ID in that input, then the value of this input would be empty string, that is falsy. And and if there is no ID, then that would indicate to us that we are actually inserting the label, we are creating a new entry in the label table. But if we find an ID in this input, then that's mean we are not creating a label, we are actually updating the existing label. So I will use uh, okay, so either I can duplicate this one. For example, I would say if ID is this, then use this, else use this. So I can update if there is an ID, that's mean I want to uh, there are multiple methods. Let me see. Express method for update. Fetch method for update. So as we can see that we can use patch. So let's use patch. So actually it does not matter. You can use any method. You can still update the record. You can even use the post, but we are trying to follow the convention uh, so that we can follow the same approaches that internet people are doing on our internet. So here I would use patch. So patch, we will consider that patch means we are trying to update. And here I would pass the ID. Okay. If you look at the code, both of these sections looks very similar. There is very small amount of difference in both of these codes. So that's mean we are rewriting code, and we should the principle of good programming is that we should not repeat the code. We should write the code in such a way that it should so that it should be it could be reused. So I'm going to refactor this code to avoid the repetition. So here I want to use, so we can do both things with just same block of code with few changes. For example, we want patch only if there is an ID. If there is no ID, then we want to use post method. So we use the ternary operator. I hope that you are now comfortable and familiar with the ternary operator. If not, then you can learn it from internet. It is very simple. It is just if else. It is short form of if else. Further, I think we don't need to make any change here. If there is no ID, then it would just pass the empty string to the ID. So now let's go back to the Node.js, and we have to copy paste the same endpoint, because our new endpoint would look like almost same with some differences. This time instead of post we have patch method, and instead of insert this time we have update query. Update label set title is equal to single quotes. Within the single quotes I want to pass the request.body.title. Okay, all right. After that is done, I guess we don't have to do anything else. Now let's go back to the common.js, and here everything is already set up here. We know that after this would be executed, even if it is patch or post, in every case it will go to this line. After that, that would then in result reload the sidebar labels. So let's try that. In there, instead of hello, I want to call it hello 1 2 3, and let's see if that updates. Oops, I messed it up. So this is a blunder that you should never do in your real projects. I updated the data in the backend, but I forgot to add the where condition. So you must have to provide the where condition, otherwise it would update all of the records available in your database. For example, if there are 50 million rows in your MySQL table, it will update all of them, and you will be destroyed. So here just type where id is equal to request.body.id. So in this way, we are updating only those labels that have the ID equal to this. We know that there is only one ID. Uh, one ID cannot be duplicate. So obviously there would be only one label with one ID. So it would update that. So let's try. I'm going to remove all of the labels, and I will create a new one. And now I will update this one to fix it and click on the save. Alright, you can see that now our update function is working perfectly fine. So now we have completed all of the CRUD operations for the label. We have seen that how we can display a list of the labels. Uh, we have created the delete feature. We have created the update feature. So this is almost done. Next, I'm going to stop this session here, but in the next session, we will work on creating a relationship between labels and contacts. So in the next session, we will complete this relationship where in this sidebar, instead of showing the hard-coded number of contacts, so 500 is actually number of contacts. Right now it is hard-coded, but once it is completed, we will show the real number of contacts in this label. And in the list of contacts, under the labels area, we will show the real labels like on the real app. So, and if you open a contact, then on that contact you should be able to see the real label, and you should be able to modify labels from this dialog as well. Okay, so we will work on all of these features. So I hope that this session was very interesting for you. If you have any questions in your mind, or if any suggestions, then please leave them in your comments section of this video. And also please don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel and like and share this video. Thanks for watching. See you next time.